When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. I may have thought I was prepared, but having known only a handful of people who had ever breastfed and only seeing it up close from a couple of them, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a lactation consultant, and a childbirth educator. Many of my clients are surprised by their own self-doubt and anxiety over every baby feeding decision. And in the years that I've been connecting with people during pregnancy and breastfeeding, I've seen time and time again that those anxieties are reduced through hearing from others about their experiences without judgment or fear. Welcome to the Milk Making Minutes. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh. I invite you to sit back and listen in to reduce your breastfeeding anxiety through explorations of real-life breastfeeding. Welcome to episode 28 of the Milk Making Minutes. I'm your host, Lo. Today, I would like to take a little moment to talk about engorgement because we've heard it discussed multiple times by multiple guests, and it was a big factor in this past week's guest's story, Odelia from Ireland. So if you didn't catch that story, go back to episode 27 and check it out. So engorgement refers to the mammary glands feeling tender, larger, and heavier, caused by both an increase in milk production and an increased flow of blood and lymph to the mammary glands. And that occurs between day 2 and day 6 once the mature milk is coming in. So if baby is nursing efficiently and effectively and colostrum is removed early and often, the breastfeeding or chest feeding person is less likely to experience painful engorgement. So what does that mean for what causes engorgement? If nursing is delayed, if baby nurses infrequently or ineffectively, if the glands stay full of milk for too long, then any of that will cause the blood circulation to slow down. It will cause pressure to build up. The spaces between the cells will open and proteins from the blood and milk seep into the mammary tissue. And this causes that extreme swelling that so many people are familiar with, that taut breast, the tender, swollen breast that sometimes you can't even get into the baby's mouth because it's so tight. That's from that extreme swelling from the pressure being built up. So another cause of that swelling could also be from IV fluids. So for me, my first birth took 3 days. It was an induction in the hospital, and I needed IV fluids for most of those 3 days. And that meant by the time I got to deliver my baby, I was swollen like the girl who turns into a blueberry in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So if you have IV fluids and you have a lot of them and you're noticing swelling in other parts of your body, it's more likely that you're going to also have swelling in your breast tissue because there's more fluid flowing there. And so once the milk comes in, the extra pressure can lead to that engorgement. So what are some ways to prevent or reduce the engorgement that you experience in those days 2 through 6? I will note that some people think, oh, it's just days 2 through 6. You know, if it goes away, no big deal. But this engorgement can turn into a bigger problem and can last for up to 14 days and can lead to reduced milk supply, low weight gain in the baby, health concerns in both mom and baby if it is not taken care of properly. And so it is good to try to prevent it and reduce it, not only because you're in severe pain for those days that you have it, but also because it can lead to more complications down the line. So the first way to prevent that engorgement is to nurse early and often. So often hospital staff give instructions to limit nursing to X amount of time or every few hours. And this actually goes against what is best practice for getting your milk to come in and for getting the blood and the lymph and the colostrum flowing in your body. So the milk is not what we call stasis. So it's not just sitting there in the body, which will lead to more swelling. So it could be different for every baby, but very often they nurse for a few minutes every hour. That gets that blood and that milk flowing and moving throughout the mammary glands, or even for hours at a time in the early weeks. I sometimes hear clients coming to me saying, my baby's always on me, never wants to stop nursing. I feel like something's wrong with my baby. This is actually biologically normal behavior. And this is a behavior of the baby that allows that milk to be flowing constantly. But if a person in the early weeks is experiencing engorgement because the baby is not nursing enough, or because the baby has an inefficient latch, which is not removing milk, so maybe baby is nursing around the clock, but something is going on anatomically inside of that baby's mouth, or maybe mom and baby just haven't worked out together best positioning to get that good latch, then that milk's not going to be flowing. And it is important to get the milk flowing. So you can start out by doing some massage, and you can use warmth on the breasts before expressing the milk.
Do you love to read about pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding? Are you looking for books to help you become a more confident parent? Or perhaps books to help you understand what went wrong with your breastfeeding journey, or to do better next time with breastfeeding? Or do your kids have questions about breastfeeding or pregnancy, but you don't really know how to answer them? Would you prefer to have a curated list on these topics? Go to the link in the show notes to my new affiliated bookshop. Every purchase you make benefits the Milk Making Minutes. But better than that, these books are vetted. I've read them all, and I feel very confident recommending them to you. I'll be adding to them continuously, so go to that link when you want to purchase a book. It will help the show, and you can feel confident it will be a purchase you will enjoy.
Hand expression is often better than using a pump in this instance when you're trying to relieve engorgement. If you aren't able to figure out hand expression, then of course, whatever you need to do to get the milk flowing, if you need to use a pump, you can. But hand expression uses positive pressure on the areola, whereas a pump uses the negative pressure of suction, and that can actually cause more swelling if you're feeling very swollen already. But only express or pump until you feel comfort, until you feel softness. Do not express or pump more than that, because then you can start getting into that situation of over pumping on top of what your baby is removing and begin to have that extreme oversupply that can lead to more problems down the line. And then in between removing the milk, both from the baby and from expressing after the baby has fully fed, you can use cold compresses in between to try to reduce swelling. And you can also ask your care provider about using something like ibuprofen to reduce swelling as well. Sometimes that's helpful. And in fact, that is a part of the new mastitis protocol, which we'll talk about on a future episode. And then finally, I want to mention to make sure to allow the baby to have full feeds. So let baby completely finish one side before switching to the other side. If you are preparing to have a baby, or if you're wondering why you experience so much engorgement in the early days, that might give you some clues as to why you might have been so uncomfortable. We'll be back in a few days with another guest sharing their story to help you reduce your breastfeeding anxiety.